Welcome everyone. It's so good to see you all. I'm so excited to have everyone on this summer national kickoff call. I see so many faces that I recognize, and I see so many new faces, and that's really exciting. My name is Prav. I'm the Fight for Her organizing director. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I manage the East Coast of our campaign. I also get the privilege of being your moderator for today's call. So very excited to do that. We have a lot of great speakers lined up for you today and a lot of great resources, but before we dive into that, I want to get to know you all. So we have so many folks on this call right now. We actually have 130 people on this call. So we are going to, in the chat box, do introductions. Okay. So in the chat box, we are going to do introductions. So everyone get ready. What I want you to type into your chat box is your name, your pronouns, your state, and our icebreaker question, your favorite dessert. So I'm going to do a quick countdown. So in the meantime, everybody go ahead in the chat box, write down your name, your pronouns, your favorite dessert, and the state that you're from. So everyone get ready. Type it out in your chat box. 3, 2, 1, post. Ooh, they're coming in so fast. I saw chocolate pudding. Love. Totally agree. I also saw brownies. Brownies are absolutely amazing. Absolutely love that. Ice cream, vegan ice cream. Yes. Vegan ice cream is absolutely amazing. Saw mint ice cream, gummy bears. Donuts. Yes, donuts are so good. I would say my favorite's definitely ice cream. And it also looks like we've got a lot of Arizona folks on the call. Brittany just for hers is Arizona pie, so exciting. We've got a lot of Pennsylvania folks, baked butter bread. Oh, that's so good. Well, I just want to say it's been great getting to know you all in this little chat format. Before we launch into the content of our call, I want to go over some housekeeping items. One, if you are not a panelist or a speaker for this call, please mute yourself throughout the call. Two, just like we use the chat box to do intros, I'm hoping you all can continue conversation and dialogue in the chat box, continue getting to know each other. The only flag I have is if there are any inappropriate comments, we will need to turn off the chat box. If that happens, you will still be able to message the host, me. And again, I'm hoping that that doesn't happen. And while the chat box is open, please definitely feel free to get to know each other and comment in the chat box. And lastly, that brings up security. We've seen other organizations experience interruptions from trolls during video calls. These disruptions can be subtle at times, but can also include disturbing and possibly triggering material. We've taken a lot of steps to prevent these attacks from happening on this call, but because we have so many new individuals joining our movement, we cannot guarantee similar incidents won't happen in our space. Just so you all know, our moderators are prepared to remove any disruptive individuals as soon as there is a disturbance. But there are a couple of things that we can all do to protect ourselves if a troll tries to come on this call. So if there's a disturbance, I want you to do two things. I want you to turn off your volume, mute your computer, mute your phone, or turn the volume down. And two, I want you to minimize this Zoom call. What's going to happen is the slide that you all saw when you came onto this call, the welcome slide, is also our signal slide. So if you see that slide come up at any point during this call, I want you to do those two things, mute your computer and minimize. As soon as you see that the image has gone away or get a message from us in the chat to say it's safe to come back on, that'll be your signal to come back onto the call. I know this all might sound scary or uncomfortable. We want to make sure we are protected and we're taking care of each other, especially in these uncertain times. We shouldn't be discouraged by these trolls, and it should only serve as a reminder of why our work is so important. And now I'm excited to go into the content of our call and kick off this call with our amazing Fight for Her Pennsylvania organizer, Colin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Colin. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Pennsylvania Fight for Her organizer. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us on this call today and committing to Fight for Her so we can ensure that everyone abroad has access to full, comprehensive, reproductive health care that they deserve and need. The Fight for Her campaign was started in 2017 by Population Connection Action Fund and focused on mobilizing action against attempts to roll back access to safe, affordable, and comprehensive reproductive health care around the world. Our campaign is amazingly spread across 8 states and 9 cities. The Fight for Her campaign is the only group that is doing the on-the-ground grassroots activism to repeal devastating policies like the Global Gag Rule and the HELMS Amendment. The Fight for Her campaign has set ambitious yet attainable goals aimed at dismantling oppressive legislature that affects access to reproductive health care across the globe. These goals are to institute a permanent legislative ban on the Global Gag Rule via the Global Her Act, to increase US foreign aid for international family planning to $1.6 billion a year, including $111 million for UNFPA, otherwise known as the United Nations Population Fund. And finally, to repeal the HELMS Amendment to end the prohibition on foreign aid for abortion services overseas. In the last slide, you heard me mention a few pieces of legislation. I now want to take some time to break them down, starting with the HELMS Amendment. The HELMS Amendment, also known as the Foreign Assistance Act, was enacted in 1973 as a direct response to the landmark Roe v. Wade case that granted access to abortion across the United States. The HELMS Amendment is a deadly policy that has been used to ban foreign assistance from funding abortion services under any circumstances, even in the horrific cases of rape, incest, or even just to save the life of a pregnant person. It is now time for this odious policy to end. Next, we have the Global Gag Rule, also known as the Mexico City policy. This policy has been implemented by every Republican administration and rescinded by every Democratic administration since President Ronald Reagan. The Global Gag Rule prohibits funding for any foreign NGO that provides abortions, counsels about abortion, or advocates for the liberalization of abortion laws. Simply put, the mention of abortion for any reason at all jeopardizes their foreign assistance funding. This means that healthcare providers face an impossible choice: deny crucial care to some patients, lose desperately needed funding for a range of services. Either choice harms people who need help. We know how bad this policy is because we've seen it before. Under the Bush administration version, it caused unsafe abortion rates to double in several countries. It caused contraceptive shortages, clinic closures, and outreach eliminations across the board. Past versions of the Global Gag Rule only applied to US family planning funds, which was about $575 million, and could be counteracted by funds contributed from other countries. However, Trump's Global Gag Rule applies to all US funding for global health, which is a staggering $8.8 billion, which cannot be covered by contributions from other nations. Trump's deadly and expanded Global Gag Rule has had devastating impacts on reproductive health and beyond. It affects all areas of health, including, but not limited to, HIV and AIDS treatment and prevention, child nutrition services, malaria and Zika preventions, ovarian cancer screenings, pregnancy care, contraception access, and it increases in unsafe abortion and maternal mortality. One of the organizations that has been affected by Trump's Global Gag Rule is Marie Stopes International, who is one of the leading providers of contraception and safe abortion around the world. They estimate that from 2017 to 2020 alone, the loss of their services due to the global gag rule could lead to 6.5 million unintended pregnancies, 2.2 million abortions, of which 2.1 million of them would be unsafe, and horrifically 21,700 maternal deaths that could have been prevented. It is hard to realize the true impact of the global gag rule. The numbers and statistics can sometimes seem unreal. Because of that, I want to share with you a firsthand account of what it is like to be affected by the global gag rule.
Banaume walinibana nje usiku ndio bakanibaka sikujua kama banaume. Kisha ndio sasa mwezi ilipita nikakia nijikuta niko na mimba. Watatu. Niliogopa tu nisikufe.
If you could have terminated the pregnancy safely, would you have done it?
The Global Gag Rule bans the United States from funding any programs abroad where there is any mention of abortion. So the United States does not fund abortion at any time abroad, but this rule goes a step further and bans clinicians from so much as mentioning the possibility of abortion.
I came to the clinic for family planning because I want to be a responsible girl. Yeah, I have a girl. She's 2. We don't have money, and family planning is really helping us to control ourselves. Like school dropout has been controlled through family planning. I have to seek family planning so that my daughter can have the best, not like me.
Nilitaka kujiuza. Ndio nikapatanga hiyo mimba ya pili. Walinipea dawa kuweka kwa mdomo na ingine walinipea kuingiza huko ndani. Nilishtuka, alafu nilikataa kutoka sasa kwa na otherwise nilikuwa tu chemistry ndo nikaenda OC Kawanga hiyo ya bure. Wakapata hizo dawa ndani imeisha, imemaliza kumelt. Alikuwa tu na daktari alikuwa anajua huko ndo alinisaidia.
You're good to go, Colin.
Okie doke. So the impacts of the global gag rule and the HELMS amendment can be overwhelming to think about. Sometimes we are left feeling lost as to how we can combat these harmful and evil policies. But fortunately, organizing and rallying support around the Global HER Act, we can help ensure that if passed, no one will have to fear the global gag rule again. Banding together in solidarity across the country, working to hold our elected officials accountable, and mobilizing our support, we have the power to flip the script and save lives. The Global Health, Empowerment, and Rights Act, known as the Global HER Act, was introduced into the Senate and House by Jean Shaheen and Representative Nita Lowey, respectively. It would create a permanent legal repeal of the global gag rule and end the partisan cycle implementing and rescinding the executive order and allowing organizations to retain the funding that they need and deserve. The Global HER Act makes it clear that it's doctors and nurses and midwives and other healthcare providers who know how best to care for their patients, not politicians, especially not politicians from a foreign country. Introduced in the House, Bill number HR 1055 by sponsor Representative Nita Lowey The latest action on the Global HER Act was on February 7th, 2019, where it was referred to the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Incredibly, it has 193 co-sponsors. In the Senate, as Bill number 368, it was sponsored by Senator Jeanne Shaheen and the latest action was also on February 7th, 2019, where it was read twice and referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations. Currently, it has 46 co-sponsors in the Senate. It is amazing that our fight for her family has been able to foster so much legislative support in the short amount of time our campaign has been on the ground. Not only have we accomplished fostering support in the House and Senate, we have gathered an astounding 54,000 petitions from constituents calling on their representatives to support the Global HER Act, and volunteers have taken 614 actions. The volunteers and organizers of the campaign have had 184 media hits published in local, state, and national news. Media hits range from writing letters to the editor, submitting op-eds, interviews, and radio shows. Media hits are so important because it is a direct message from you to your senator, calling upon them to support the Global HER Act. They will read your letter, your opinions, and whatever information you submit to them, and they will hear your call and they will know that it came from you. Pictured here in the slideshow are 6 media hits from this past week alone. In the summer of 2018 and 2019, we hosted 2 full-day HER summits to train activists and community members on grassroots activism. Over 700 students and community members attended. During the summit, guests learned about reproductive rights, grassroots organizing, candidate engagement, get out the vote efforts, and how to fight for her. Hosting several dozen kitchen table conversations, volunteers engaged over 300 family and friends in their homes, dorms, and libraries by getting them to commit to the fight for her. As a campaign, we have collected 10,300 pledges to vote pro-choice during the 2018 midterm election, and we conversed with over 8,400 voters through canvassing and phone banking. We have built our teams and built power to make a difference on this issue. A campaign of our size, filled with passion and dedication, is going to make a huge difference this year. At the end of this call, you are going to hear from my fabulous colleague and organizing partner, Lee, on various ways that you can get involved. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Prab, who is going to introduce our panel for tonight's discussion.
Colin, thank you so much for giving that overview. Snaps for Colin. It was very informative and I think very important. So I'm actually very excited. We are very fortunate to have 2 guest speakers on this call. When you all RSVP'd, you submitted questions for us to ask our panelists, and we will be using the questions you submitted in this Q&A portion. I'm very excited to announce our first speaker, Stacey Murphy, Population Connection Action Fund's Director of Congressional Relations. Stacey represents Population Connection Action Fund both on the Capitol and in meetings with coalition partners. Stacey has a wealth of knowledge about current policy issues. She holds a master's degree in public policy from the George Washington University with a concentration in gender and social policy. Stacey, we are so excited to have you on this call. To kick things off, earlier in the call, we asked activists and volunteers to share their favorite dessert. So I'm going to let you intro yourself with any other details you'd like to share and share your favorite dessert.
Hi, everybody. So glad to have you all here. My name is Stacey Murphy. I won't go through my title again because Prob already did that. She, her pronouns. And I am a huge chocoholic. If a dessert menu does not have a chocolate dessert on it, then I don't bother. It's not worth the calories. Like if chocolate disappeared, I could give up sugar forever. Yeah.
I totally agree.
I see some snaps happening.
Lots of snaps in the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and dive straight into the QA portion. Colin gave an overview of Trump's Global Gag Rule, and I wanted to ask you, what have we seen in the past years when the Global Gag Rule was in place and when it wasn't?
there are dramatic impacts when the gag rule is in place. So originally it was put in place in 1984. It's flopped back and forth between being in effect and being rescinded, depending on who's in the White House. And we get the anecdotal effects pretty quickly. We start hearing from partners in the field what's going on, but getting really good quantitative data takes a while. It turns out we didn't get really good, solid quantitative data on the Bush administration gag rule until just a couple of years ago. And even just last year, we saw a really major study come out in The Lancet that showed that under the Bush administration gag rule, the countries in sub-Saharan Africa that were most heavily impacted by the policy actually saw their abortion rates go up by about 40%. Unintended pregnancy rates spiking, maternal mortality rates, all of those things go up when the policy is in effect. And we know that was under the more limited version imposed by the Bush administration. So we're gathering data as we speak right now on the Trump version of the policy. And it's going to take a while for really widespread qualitative data, but we know that these impacts are just devastating.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Stacey. And I actually saw that Congressman Vera also joined onto the call. I'm trying to find the video screen, but Congressman Vera, welcome. We are so excited to have you on this call. I know our activists and our volunteers are very excited to have both you and Stacey on this call. So from this point on, I'll be addressing questions to both. But Stacey, this question is actually another one for you. This is a question that volunteers submitted. And the question is, why don't organizations just agree to the Global Gag Rule and not lose funding?
So that's a good question. I wondered that early on when I was just learning about these issues. If the risk is that you might have to close, why wouldn't you accept the funding even if there are restrictions on it? And the answer is that you can't have a conversation about maternal mortality in the developing world if you can't talk about unsafe abortion. And you can't talk about unsafe abortion unless you can talk about safe abortion. Those two things go together. And providers, particularly in places where there are high rates of unsafe abortion and the morbidity and mortality that come along with that, feel like they have an ethical obligation to try to stand up for their patients. And in places where abortion is legal, they feel that they have an ethical obligation to offer full and complete information and services to their patients. And so they can't, it would be against their oaths, it would be against their conscience to accept the funding restrictions. And so they have to turn it down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Stacey. And then Congressman Vera, I just wanted to give a quick introduction for our audience. Congressman Ami Bera is a physician who has been the U.S. representative for California's 7th Congressional District since 2013. Congressman Bera is a co-sponsor of the Global Health Empowerment and Rights Act and is a champion of reproductive rights. Congressman Bera, I'll let you introduce yourself and then I'll go ahead and ask you your first question.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And thank you for inviting me on, both as a physician, but then also, as a senior member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and someone who spends a lot of time thinking about global health. Getting rid of the global gag rule permanently and codifying this so it doesn't. A president like President Trump can't just bring it back. Is one of the smartest things we could do from a global health perspective. But it also, when I think about, empowering women and girls, you can't do that globally unless you adequately allow pregnancy spacing. And there's no way to do that without fully empowering, women to have what is a fundamental human right, control over their body, control over their own reproductive health. And that's why it is such a personal issue on my end. When I took that oath to enter medicine, the Hippocratic Oath is really rooted in 3 core principles: do good, do no harm, but patient autonomy. And there's nothing more autonomous to a patient than making their own decisions about their own body. And I look at this, both as a physician, but also as a father of a daughter. I don't want the federal government making those decisions, here in the United States. And, in the same way, I don't think you can lift people out of poverty unless they really do have full control over their reproductive decisions. And there's study after study that suggests one of the most effective things that we want to do is in addressing global poverty is actually empowering women and moms and girls to have that full control over their reproductive health. And that probably is one of the best strategies that we can have, both addressing health, but also lifting people out of poverty. So that's why it's such an important issue to me. And you've watched the Republican Party over the last 2 or 3 decades really go backwards on this issue. And it's an issue not just of reproductive rights, but it's an issue of health and poverty.
Yeah, thank you so much. I saw a lot of snaps and nods in the audience, a lot of agreement. And I also just wanted to say that we actually have a lot of your constituents on this call, a lot of folks from your district. So in the audience, if you're from Congressman Bera's district, please feel free to say hi in the chat box. And I think you brought up a really good point, and that's on the impact on folks on the ground. And so Stacey, I actually have another question for you as well. This was another volunteer question, and it's, what is the impact of the Global Gag Rule on the LGBTQI population?
Well, a lot of the reproductive health providers are integrated with LGBTI QI services, and these are marginalized populations in a lot of places that don't have a lot of opportunity or a lot of options for where to go for healthcare. And so anything that shuts down full service clinics shuts down some of the only options for LGBTQI populations. I don't have direct statistics, but we know that there is a large impact, and that that's a particularly vulnerable community in a lot of places.
Thank you. And then Stacey, one more question. Since Reagan, every Democratic president has repealed the Global Gag Rule and every Republican president has reimposed it. Why are we pushing for more than just a repeal, and why is getting the Global Her Act so important?
Well, because it can come back. And the fact that it can come back so easily really means that it's a problem even when it's not in effect, because programs can't plan long-term. They can't have a steady source of funding. They can't have steady policies. They can't have consistency in their programs. And it's much, much easier to close a clinic than it is to open one up. And so when the gag rule disappears, clinics are just gone a lot of the times, and a lot of them don't come back. We need this gone permanently because it is both a terrible expression of United States foreign policy. What a horrible thing to be doing, what a horrible thing to be projecting out there. But also so that people in the developing world who are running these clinics can make plans and build structures and build things and partnerships that can last. So it matters even when it's not in effect.
Yeah, thank you, Stacey. And then Congressman Bera, this is a volunteer submitted question. As a doctor and legislator, why is fighting for reproductive rights so important? And why do you support the Global Her Act?
As Stacey just pointed out, when you're making these long-term investments, particularly in the developing world where they have fewer resources, there has to be some certainty. I mean, you can't every 4 years stop and start a clinic. And we've seen that back and forth between Republican administrations and Democratic administrations. I'm a believer in the importance of aid and development around the world, and these are long-term investments that the United States should be making. They're not just in the interest of the countries that we're working in, but they're also in our self-interest. And if that was never more evident than the midst of a global pandemic. The fact is, we live in an interconnected world, and this pandemic reminds us that the investments we make overseas are good investments for us as well. If we want to strengthen democratic institutions, let's say in sub-Saharan Africa, where you have a very young population, that's making investments in women and girls. And again, there's tons of studies that suggest that's the best investment that we can make if we want to address and build stronger democratic institutions and lift people out of poverty. you can't get the return on that investment unless you invest in reproductive rights and reproductive health, and allow women to make those decisions. Otherwise, you don't have adequate pregnancy spacing. You don't have, and much of that continues to lead to these issues. So, it's not just a smart thing to do. It's the right thing to do, both from a healthcare perspective and an economic perspective.
Thank you so much. Again, lots of head nods, lots of snaps. A lot of folks are agreeing. We're really lucky to have a champion like you. And then this question is for both of you, Stacy and Congressman Vera. So Stacy, you can kick us off, and then we can go with Congressman Vera. And the question is, what is your advice? We have about 140 activists on this call. What is your advice to this team of activists working to ensure reproductive freedom for people around the world? So Stacy, you can kick us off, and then Congressman Vera, you can go.
Talk about it. There are so many people who still don't know that the Global Gag Rule exists, that it's an actual thing, what it does, what the impacts are, and being educated on this issue. Anytime you have an opportunity to educate someone on this issue, you have an opportunity to create a new constituent for repeal and for pushing this issue forward. So continue to talk about it, take what you've learned, and make a commitment to yourself to talk to 5 new people about it. That's what it's going to take, is enough people in enough places saying that this is a priority, that this really matters, that this is something that they care about, that they want to push this forward. And that's the only way we're going to get anywhere, is if everybody is pushing.
Thank you.
And I think I'd echo what Stacy said. My colleague and our civil rights hero, John Lewis, always talks about making good trouble. Make good trouble, show up, and that's half of it. And I know from my constituents, supporters of the Global Her Act have shown up at my town halls. We've taken pictures together. They've activated their social media stuff. So for those folks who have members of Congress who are supporters of the Global Her Act, show up at their town halls and let them know and thank them, and just reinforce the fact that they're in this fight. But for those that are not co-sponsors, show up at their town halls as well. And, that activism is important. And, half of this is showing up and giving voice to those that may not have that voice, and really challenging them to back up their opinions. I know, we were in a meeting with Ivanka Trump, who was talking about how she wanted to focus in on women's empowerment and make investments in Africa and women and girls. I could have sat there silently, but I didn't. It's like, when you can spend millions and millions of dollars on this, or hundreds of millions of dollars, but you're never going to get the returns unless you also invest in reproductive health. It's just not going to be an investment that gets you what you want. And I think it's important for us to speak up and speak truth to the power.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think that's really powerful. We need more elected officials to take action and to speak up on these issues. We're lucky to have you, Congressman Vera. And then our team of activists definitely taking action constantly, and the importance of taking action. So thank you so much for highlighting that. I want to thank both Congressman Vera and Stacy for being on this call. I always do like the spirit fingers, so everyone can do spirit fingers to thank them. Or like thumbs up.
Mine for Congressman Vera.
And so we actually wanted to take a team picture, a screenshot. Right now, our campaign organizer from Ohio will be taking the screenshot.
I see everybody flipping their hair.
I know, gotta fix it up. And so everybody, I'm gonna count down from 5. And then when I say go, and then both of you are getting lots of thanks in the chats, just wanted to point that out. So everybody, please turn your video on. And then I'm going to count back from 5, and we're going to take a team screenshot. You can do whatever you'd like to do. We're going to do 2 just to make sure that they both come out good. So ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I heard that. We're going to go with it, and we're going to do 1 more, but this time we're going to be excited. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay, thank you again so much, Stacy and Congressman Vera. We are so happy and excited that you were able to make this call. And I know our volunteers and activists are very grateful to have had this conversation with you.
Well, thank you for everything that all of you do.
Oh, thank you. Lots of snaps again in the comment section. So now I'm very excited to kick it over to my amazing colleague, Lee, who is our Tucson Fight for Her organizer, and she's going to give you ways that you can actually do what Congressman Vera and Stacy talked about, which is put power to action and take action right now. So Lee, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yeah. So the thing that comes to mind first is, why is it important to fight for her now when there's a pandemic and when everything is so uncertain? Why should access to abortion care and reproductive health rights matter right now? This might be sort of obvious to the folks on this call, but a pregnancy can't be put on pause. People don't stop needing sexual and reproductive health care during a pandemic. Yet in the developing world, COVID-19 is hitting healthcare systems already disrupted by dangerous policies like the Global Gag Rule. Since Donald Trump imposed this disgraceful policy, he has forced health clinics to shut their doors. Now, healthcare centers, the ones that have managed to remain open, they're overwhelmed with COVID-19 cases and simply don't have the resources they need to provide the full range of reproductive health care. We know that reproductive rights are human rights, and it is critical that we keep pressure on Congress to repeal this devastating policy. And speaking of Congress, if we want to end the Global Gag Rule and pass the Global HER Act and just generally have a healthier, more empowered world, we have some seats in the House and the Senate to protect or flip. And that's what we're really here to talk about. This isn't just some high stakes game of musical chairs where whoever is closest when the music stops wins. If we stop early, like now, and go hard until the last polling sites close on November 6th, we get to decide when the music stops and who wins. So that's why we need to start now, because this isn't just about voting, though that is important, like super important, like so insanely important. I can't even adequately express how important. It's very important. But it's also about making sure Fight for Her voters are registered to vote and that they know who on their ballots will vote and fight for global reproductive health, rights and health. We have 6 months, that's 170 days, including the weekends, to register our neighbors, get our friends to pledge to vote for pro-choice champions, and call as many voters as we can to make sure they are on our side and have a voting plan. We have 170 days to make sure that for the next 2 years in the House of Reps, 4 years in the White House, and 6 years in the Senate, we'll have champions who fight for her. 6 months into the election doesn't feel like quite as much time when there's so much to do. And that's why we're starting now. So starting right now, what can you do? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. You can write a letter to your senators. It's super easy. One of my colleagues is gonna drop a link in the chat box right about now. I can't actually see the chat box, so I assume it's magically appearing. Go ahead, yep, there it is, just popped in, beautiful. So go ahead and open that link. I'll wait. Once you have it open, fill it out. We'll all fill them out together. I'll give you all a minute. I just want to flag that once you open it, you do have to select a title, and there aren't any gender neutral options. We've looked into getting this corrected, and unfortunately we can't right now. Just pick the one that feels the most comfortable for you today. So yeah, I'm gonna give you a second to go ahead and fill that out. When you're done, you can give me a real thumbs up, Or you can, there's a reactions option at the bottom of your screen. You can give me a fake thumbs up. Both are good. So when you're done, go ahead and do that thumbs up. Very improv, they're on top of it. Lindsay, Brittany. Who else? Give you a couple more seconds. Alrighty, awesome, cool. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up popping up here. So go ahead, keep filling them out. We should be just about done. Looks like most folks are finished. So congrats team, we just collectively wrote over 250 letters to our senator urging them to end Trump's deadly global gag rule. That's really exciting. And the thing about that is that it only takes about 30 letters to get a staffer's attention and for that staffer to bring our issue to their senator. So 250 is a few more than 30. I'm pretty excited. Now, keeping that in mind, wouldn't it be great if 650 people wrote a letter? If we each get 5 people to send a letter, we can do that. So thumbs up again, real or fake, if you can send this link to 5 of your friends. Awesome, that was really cool. All these thumbs just popped up. And send another, what if you, like, can you guys post it on Facebook or Instagram? Thumbs up for that. That's awesome, guys. So we have so much ability to really pass this around and share it and get so many more people to write letters to our senators telling them why the global gag rule needs to be ended now. So I can kind of feel your collective constituent power growing, and I know you're all hungry for more. And lucky for you, my colleague Tony has more ways you can make a difference. So handing it off to you, Tony.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Lee. So if you're already brainstorming places that you can send this letter, like Shelby is, I saw, to your whole sorority, great idea. We have siblings, we have coworkers, neighbors, classmates, professors. If you're thinking and now ruminating on all of the different people that you could potentially send this letter to, congratulations, you are on your way to becoming a relational leader with the Fight for Her campaign. So we can individually make such a big impact by motivating the people around us to take action, to make sure that those people are registered to vote and that they actually get out there and vote. So us mobilizing our own communities is a crucial part of making sure that we pass the Global Her Act when we have new leaders in Congress and in the White House who believe in access to reproductive freedom. So if you're already thinking about this, if you're starting to send your emails and your text messages to your friends to sign this letter, you're a relational leader in the making. So Fight for Her fellows that are on this call, maybe folks can put a thumbs up if you're a Fight for Her fellow, so we can see some folks that are going to be with us this summer. Got a lot here, sweet. So Fight for Her fellows, you're going to be getting a deep education this summer on relational organizing and how to make an impact in your own networks and communities. But for others on the call who maybe signed a petition and heard about this in an email, saw it on a Facebook group and wanted to see what it's about, you can be a relational leader with our campaign too. So there's going to be a poll coming up soon. If you're interested in becoming a relational leader with the Fight for Her campaign, you should say yes to this poll, and folks from our team will call you in the next couple of weeks to make sure that you get all trained up to confidently educate the rest of your networks on how to make a difference in this election cycle.
Just want to flag there's a slight technical glitch. The poll will be coming up, but it'll be coming up right after another poll that's coming. So just if you're excited about being a relational leader, hold that thought. We are going to have that poll in just a little bit.
Cool. I'll also drop a tool in the chat to make sure that you can check in on if you're registered to vote or not. And you can also send that tool to others so you can check on your voter registration status. Super helpful.
Yay, thank you so much, Tony. And then the last announcement and the way that you can take action is going to be told to you by Lindsay. So Lindsay, I'm gonna go ahead and put you in Spotlight Video, and you can go ahead and talk about our next call.
Yeah, of course. So one, thank you all so much for jumping on this call. It's amazing to see like hundreds of people on this call. And just so excited to learn about all of the ways that you can get involved in the work that we're going to be doing this summer. And I think these calls are a really great way to just come together as activists from all across the country. So that's why we want to get you plugged into our next National Volunteer Call, which is going to be on June 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time or 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Personally, I'm really excited about this call because our guest speakers are two reproductive health experts from Kenya. We're going to be joined by Melvin Oyo, who's a Fight for Her advocate. We've been working with closely to document the impacts of Trump's global gag rule. And then we'll also be joined by Dixon Okongo, who is the executive director of Stretcher's Youth Organization, which works to advance sexual and reproductive health and rights in Mombasa, Kenya. So we're going to be having a conversation about what reproductive health access looks like in Kenya, how U.S. policies negatively impact their work, and what activists like you can do to make a real difference. So you can actually sign up right now. Fill out this poll that Prob launched. Say, I'm in, sign me up, and then we'll reach out tomorrow with an email with more logistical information.
Oh, that's so cool. So many folks signing up. So yeah, keep on signing up. And then in a few seconds, I'm going to end this poll and we're going to start the poll for you all to sign up as relational leaders. So I'm going to give everyone a countdown. So 5 more seconds to answer on this poll. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so thank you all. We just got 98 folks signed up for our next call, which is very, very exciting. And now I would like to share you on the relational organizing poll. So if you heard what Tony was talking about and you want to relational organize with the Fight for Her campaign, please mark that you would like to do so now. Okay, and then I'm going to do another countdown. Anybody that marks that they would like to relational organize, you'll get information on a training to do that. So that'll be upcoming after this call. So I'm going to do a quick countdown for closing this poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And 63 people just signed up to be relational organizers, which is very, very exciting. And so the last thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, I'm going to kick it over to Carrie Koisman, who's our Fight for Her Ohio organizer, and she's actually going to share an action that you can take tomorrow. So Carrie, kicking it over to you.
Thanks. Oh, I got spotlighted. I wasn't ready. Wow. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling very encouraged and excited and ready to go and win for pro-choice candidates in 2020, activate my personal network. And tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we're going to be having a Twitter chat with Dr. T and Dennis from Carter from Rewire. Dr. T is a fierce reproductive activist in South Africa. She is an OBGYN doctor who really focuses a lot on the intersection of reproductive freedom and sexual pleasure. She's an amazing, amazing physician and activist working on the ground in a place that has been affected by Trump's global gag rule, and just has so much information and knowledge to impart on all of us. And Dennis is an amazing moderator who frequently reports on reproductive freedom and how it is being limited by our current administration and state officials. So I really want to encourage all of you tomorrow to post a picture or post a video of why you fight for her so that we can share those on our national Pop Connect account on Twitter, as well as our individual state accounts. So the steps are as follows. You will take a picture, make a video, like I mentioned, follow the Pop Connect account on Twitter, as well as if you're in a state that has a Fight for Her campaign on the ground, please follow your account there. Favorite and retweet content during the chat. And then at the very end of the Twitter chat, so at 1:55 Eastern time and whatever that is in other parts of the country, post your pictures and videos of why you fight for her. And let's get trending on Twitter like we did a couple of months ago. And I'm really excited about this action, and I can't wait to see all of you guys on Instagram and Twitter. And then lastly, Dr. T wants to hear from all of you. So if you have any questions about reproductive rights in South Africa, please feel free to drop them in the chat box below, and we will get them over to Dr. T, and you may have your question answered tomorrow. So I'm going to hand it back over to Prab, but thanks again, everybody, for being here, and I'm so excited for tomorrow.
And mute myself. Okay. Thank you again, everyone, for coming to this call. I hope you can all, I think, Carrie, you summed it up perfectly. There's just so much collective power on this call right now, and we just made a huge impact through signing our letters, signing up for relational organizing, signing up for this next call, and making a difference. So I just want you all to know that you have power. The things that you are doing on this campaign, the volunteering, the activism, your activism, it matters and it does make a difference. So thank you again for everyone for being here. After this call, tomorrow you're going to receive an email, a follow-up email with all the actions that we talked about today. So please keep an eye on that. And then if you have any questions, you all have my email now. So please feel free to email me with any questions or follow-ups that you have. If you signed up to be a relational organizer, you will hear from us on the training that's happening on that. And then if you signed up for the June call, tomorrow you're going to get a confirmation email with your Zoom information for that call. But that's everything that I had. I hope you all have an amazing, amazing night. And thank you for your power and activism. Bye, everyone.